President Obama used to be one of the most ardent advocates for against military commissions. He tried to shut down Guantanamo Bay, stop the use of military commissions, and he started doing that within his presidency. But midway through, he stopped. He changed his mind. Why? Because he realized that stopping the use of military commissions and transferring these terrorists to the United States puts innocent United States citizens in jeopardy. And that is never justified. We cannot put innocent civilians in jeopardy in the pursuit of justice. That flies in the face of the reason we pursue justice in the first place. I believe that the end goal in today's debate round should be U.S. national security, and that is best protected through the military commissions. In today's speech, I have three main voting issues, and these will echo the three main points of argumentation in my 2NC that we've really been bringing up. My first major voting issue is that Article 3 courts are not always better. I'd like to respond to some of the affirmative team's points. They talked about how military commissions are incredibly inefficient and how they don't have true justice. I have two responses. First of all, this is a reason for reforming the military commissions. It's not a reason to end them altogether. If you look back at the 1AC and the 24 national security experts that supposedly support their policy, the evidence said that many of them support reforming military commissions, and they actually are against ending them altogether. But my second response is that the punishment is just. As my partner read evidence for in the 1NC, we've already declared them high-level international terrorists, and we've announced that they will be spending the rest of their lives in Guantanamo Bay. This is just. We're not letting the terrorists walk free. I'd next like to respond to the card of evidence talking about the 360 convictions. And I do apologize. It does say 360 convictions in a section of the card not underlined. I was only looking at the card of evidence that was underlined they told us to look at. So I apologize for that. But my response to this is that Tier 1 convictions are not comparable. Tier 1 convictions are not comparable. They didn't respond to the study I brought up from the New York Law Journal that specifically looked at all terrorism-related cases. And they said that less than a dozen of the convictions were comparable to high-level terrorists in Guantanamo Bay. It specifically drew the link to Guantanamo Bay detainees that the affirmative team's evidence does not. And so of the supposedly 593 successes, only 12 of them were true successes in federal courts. Federal courts have only worked 12 times in this regard. They also talked about secret evidence and how we can provide a summary instead of the full intelligence. I have two responses. First of all, summary still gives the terrorists intelligence. They're able to still see what we have, and even a summary gives up valuable information. But my second response is that the exception is not always used. I read evidence of two different instances in which the exception wasn't used, and we gave critical information over to terrorists because specifically we used Article 3 courts. Now they claimed that Article 3 courts have the same procedures as military commissions. We asked for this evidence, and the evidence does not say this. All the evidence says is that the United States federal courts use the Classified Information Procedures Act, which is different from the Article 3 courts, which is different from the military commissions. However, according to evidence that we've read, military commissions specifically have different procedures. They have different procedures. They don't force you to hand classified intelligence over the defendant at all. There is no constitutional requirement. But the final issue for how Article 3 courts are not always better is that a single juror can dismantle an entire case. In federal courts, you have a jury of the people deciding. And if a single juror decides that the terrorist is innocent, he walks free. And we specifically read evidence that this puts U.S. national security and puts U.S. civilians at risk. This brings me to the second voting issue, and that is of lost intelligence. Lost intelligence. The affirmative team never really responded to this, and regardless of whether the intelligence concerns are real or not, the allies still believe that they are real. They still believe that there's a chance that classified intelligence is handed over to the terrorists in Article 3 courts and aren't in military commissions. And they actually end reduced intelligence support to the United States when we try them in to Article 3 courts. This brings me to the third and final voting issue, and that is that national security is harmed. Their one response was prisons are safe, and they read a card of evidence saying that no terrorists had ever escaped from prison. My response is, first of all, they can cause terrorism inside the walls. They can cause issues inside the walls. The evidence we read wasn't of a terrorist escaping. It was of a terrorist stabbing a prison guard inside of the prison. It was of a terrorist causing harm to United States national interests. And this was specifically a terrorist that was transferred from Guantanamo Bay, which the affirmative team is doing. Furthermore, they dropped the point that terrorists transferred from Guantanamo Bay radicalize U.S. citizens in prison, who then turn around and attempt to commit terrorist attacks. And we read evidence of this happening as well. I'd like to close this round in the words of Louis Pepe, the prison guard that was stabbed. He said this: "It is going to happen again, unless trials get moved to where they belong, in a military commission." Thank you.